I want to get a text message just as we go live. Hello, rebels and rule breakers. We haven't got anybody in the live just yet, but that's okay. I'm sure people will catch us up. I am very happy to introduce to you guys somebody who's been in my life for all of my life, Mr. Matthew Taylor.
Hello, chicken.
Hello. So Matt and I grew up together, didn't we?
We did. We
Us
did
and our
indeed.
siblings.
Yeah.
Our mums went to school together and all of that. We've got Kazza, got Rippers on. Hi, Rippers. Yeah, our mums went to school together, didn't they? And they've been friends for life. Very close.
Yeah.
We shared our childhoods together. We had some amazing times on the farm, didn't we, where you used to live?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, we've kind of watched each other's lives go through all sorts of twists and turns. And I've always said that we're a bit like cousins, but not blood related.
True that. No, true.
True that. Defo. Hi, Matt Del Rio. So yeah, so I'm really excited to have you on this live today, Matt. So thank you so much for doing that. And I'm particularly excited because you've got a passion that is really, really interesting. And the number of conversations I've had with you over the last few years about this, and I learn something new every single time. And what's fascinating about it is that it relates to us as human beings in so many ways. So we're going to focus on that. So that topic is bees.
Buzzing.
Tell us about your bees, Matt.
Okay. I've deliberated where to... How did I get into it?
Yeah.
My mum bought me a course on beekeeping through Cheshire Beekeepers one Christmas.
Wow. Did you do that randomly?
Yeah, she'd seen an advert of Cheshire Beekeepers advertising the course, and she sort of thought, "Oh, I'll get that for our Matt." So yeah, that's kind of what got me into it. It was 2 years after I did the course before I actually got any bees, because I couldn't afford to buy any at the time. I'd just been made redundant. So yeah, I started beekeeping. Well, I'm just starting into my 11th year now.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. So, I call the operation sort of went through various name changes over that time, and eventually we settled on Viking bees.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, there's a lot of things unique between both bees and Vikings. Obviously, a lot of their ships were made watertight with beeswax. Now, I think to better explain things, I need to explain how and why bees swarm. So, primarily, bees swarm because this is their way of reproducing, and it's their reproductive system. Oh. So, you'll take a standard beehive as we know it. We'll call that, say, hive 1, parent colony, which has got a laying queen in there that could be anything up to about 5 years old. So what the bees will do, they'll get to a point where the swarming impulse kicks in. Now, this can be for one of many reasons. It could be the beekeepers use too much smoke, interferes with them too much, or it might be they've not been given enough space to store the stuff or expand within a hive. This can all trigger swarming. Sometimes the bees have just got a swarming impulse that's quite strong, and this makes them want to swarm. So essentially, to keep it relatively basic, the queen leaves the hive with about half the flying bees, and they then sort of perch on a post, usually about 100 yards away from a hive, group together, regather, and then scout bees will start going out from that cluster of bees to find an appropriate dwelling to go and move into. Once that's been found, they all move off and take residence elsewhere. So as Vikings set off on their voyages to find new lands to settle in, we've got a nice analogy there between bees and Vikings on travel and transport.
Is anyone else hearing a weird echo, by the way, when I talk?
No, I'm not.
aren't you? I'm getting it just sometimes. Morning, Chazza.
Another analogy we can make between bees and Vikings is, again, navigation. The bees use photoreceptors on the heads to find the polarized light when it's a cloudy day. So they know exactly where the sun is, and they work the sun as a compass from the angle of the sun to their hive. They then triangulate to the forage source from the angle of the sun to the hive. The Vikings also used the same thing. They used like a calcium carbonate stone they used to call a sunstone, and that would pick up polarized light in a dull day. So the forms of navigation between bees and Vikings is very, very similar too. Obviously, Vikings are very, very well known for mead, made from honey, of course. I'm trying to find my notes where I put them. So yeah, so as we've got, yeah, I've got an echo there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people, other people, I'm just jiggering around with the settings. It's like an echo cancellation thing, but sorry to ruin your flow there.
That seems to have stopped now. Oh no, it's not. Oh, well, we'll just carry on.
If you've got any devices around you that are perhaps picking up anything,
I can move my phone. Maybe that's doing something.
Yeah, that might work.
That might work.
Use out of the way as well. Sorry, mate.
It's all right. So
the navigation.
So navigation, yeah. So bees are navigated, and then they swarm to reproduce. So a hive could kick out potentially 4-6 swarms in a year if you let them get on with it. Obviously, as beekeepers, we manipulate to control swarming. There's various things we do. So when you've started off with this one parent colony, and now you've had that's lost 6 swarms out, you've gone from your corner shop to having a chain of supermarkets, essentially. So, and as bees originated originally from Africa, the honeybees originally from Africa, and it colonized and spread over millennia to being worldwide, they were the first forerunners of globalization.
Yeah, that's a really interesting way to look at it.
So they capitalized completely way before anybody else even thought of it. So, and they've done it with no money.
It's so clever
by servicing.
How they interact with each other, isn't it? They just sort of, I like the fact that they behave instinctively as a collective.
Yeah, well, they look at the hive as just one ecosystem, one brain, if you like. Yeah.
Ripon is asking, are bees expensive?
A bee's expensive. If you were to buy just a colony of bees in a small box, you'd pay anywhere between 180 to 250 quid.
Right.
If you bought them as a complete hive, about 300 quid a hive.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. But then there's all the smoker and honey spinners, extraction equipment. It just goes on and on and on.
I bet. How much time do you spend? How many hours do you reckon you spend on them?
If you ask my wife, she'd say far too many. But no, generally it can be usually around about an hour a hive a week at the most, really.
And does it fluctuate seasonally?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, now they're all packed up in bed now. They're all tucked in for winter. So I won't be opening a hive until probably weekend just before Christmas.
Yeah.
Where I'll just go in and put some treatment on them for varroa mites.
Right. Shaz is saying, bees are so beautiful and I'm loving your analogies. And Dave says, near my friends, they have a beekeeper. In summer, their hive got too small, so half left and swarmed in their garden, and it was amazing to watch.
Oh, watching a swarm emerge is really, really fun. A bit scary.
I bet.
But a newly emerged swarm is actually really safe because when bees swarm, they completely fill the honey stomachs full of honey. So, and when they sting, they actually crank their abdomen round to sting. So it's a bit like you wanting to do full-on crunches like when you've just had your Christmas dinner.
Yeah, that's not going to happen.
A newly emerged swarm does not want to be stinging people. They're quite happy just to settle somewhere and do their own thing. However, if they've been out of the hive about 3 days and you come across it, they will be nasty, very nasty. Right. So yeah, watch out.
So we had lots and lots of, when we discussed, you know, the bees in preparation for this, we had lots and lots of bits and bobs that we talked about how why this fits with the whole rebel ethos and some of their behaviours and stuff, didn't we? And there were loads of examples you gave me.
Well, I'll tell you what, if we move on slightly to the aftermath of a swarm, what happens in the hive then? So the bees have started making new queens in the hive prior to that swarm leaving. So they've just sealed those new queen cells closed, and that's when the swarm emerges. So a few weeks later, these queens start hatching out, and the first one will hatch out, and she'll do either I mean, you might get several hatch out at once, in which case, like, you've got a killer queen situation going on here, because they will fight to the death, so only one remains. And then she'll go around all the other queen cells in the hive, and she'll sting every single queen cell and kill the queens. So that's only how she is. So it really is, you know, it's survival of the fittest, it's natural selection, and it's primary first and foremost. So is that an act of rebellion?
It's an interesting
natural selection. I think it's natural selection. It's survival of the fittest. It's that queen has emerged. She's fought with other queens to the death, and she's won. Now, however, if she's been damaged in that brawl, and say she's broken a leg or something like that, the bees will then bore around her and heat her up to the point of suffocation, and they'll start again with another egg.
Oh my God.
Because if she's no good to do a job, then she's no good to do a job, and she's not fit for purpose. So this happens. So that's reproduction in that sense of swarming. So the bees. So if you've got say if you had a failing queen, so you've moved months down the line now, you know, you've got a queen, she's getting a bit old, her egg laying's starting to slow down or anything, or she's got damaged, or she's not even not returned from a mating flight back to the hive, she's been hit by something. You know, the bees will then start to make other queens, and they'll kill her again if she's no good. If the pheromone levels are dropping, she can't control the hive. You see, worker bees can lay eggs, but they can only lay unfertilized eggs as they have no way of mating. So these eggs will then hatch out to be just drone bees, male bees. So the queen emits a pheromone which suppresses the need, the want of them to lay eggs. Is that an act of rebellion? You see, taking away their right to lay eggs. But she's doing it for the greater good of the colony, because male bees within a beehive are actually useless. They're only there to make with queens at mating season time.
Right.
During the time in the hive, all they do is eat and sleep. Sounds like a plan to me. Yeah, I'd love to. I wouldn't want to come back as a male bee though, because you really don't want to come back as a male bee. Really? Come September time, no queens are going to be on the wing to mate, and the male bee's job is redundant. So all the female workers grab hold of them and literally physically throw them out of their hive and don't let them back in again. So they just go out to the cold and the wet and die. Mating. Yeah. So when bees mate, the males leave their bits behind when they fly off from the queen, and they literally rip off the body, and they leave the bits in the queen. And then they die, of course, as a result of it.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so you don't want to come back as a male bee. No.
So yeah. Is the queen bee made then? Like
right. So the making of a queen bee is an egg that's been laid by her. That's a fertile egg, so a female egg.
Yeah.
It's then that egg can be no more than 2 days old if they're going to turn it into a queen. So at day 2 it hatches, and straight away it'll be fed royal jelly. and a different size cell will be made around it rather than a normal hexagon cell you see in beehives when you lift the frame out. They make like a teardrop shape, like a pear drop shape cell for the queen. She's given more space, she's given a different diet, and that very same egg that would have been a worker bee then turns into a queen bee.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And a queen bee from the laying of the egg to a queen hatching out is 16 days, whereas 21 days for a worker or 24 for a male.
Yeah, Dad was asking, what happens to the bits they leave behind?
They get nudged out of the way when the next one mates with a, because queens on mating flights can mate with anywhere between sort of 17 and sort of 25 male bees in one mate.
That's so greedy.
It's all done in flight.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all done in flight.
That's a bit kamikaze, isn't it?
You find like an area that's sort of covered either side by sort of vegetation and whatnot, and they'll fly at a certain height, and it's called a drone congregation area. So drones from all hives all around an area will all gather at this one place, and the queen will fly through it, and literally it's they all sort of go for it.
David Singh, who was talking about his neighbour beekeeper before, and he said that the swarm did sting him, and the keeper said once they found a way past his suit and the whole swarm knew where to sting him.
Oh yeah, I mean, I had a hole in my bee suit a couple of years back now. It was a terrifying experience. I had a little rip in my veil just under my eye. It was only about an inch long. I hadn't noticed it at all, and I'd gone into a colony that I knew was pretty feisty anyway. And as soon as I cracked the lid of the hive off, they just went for me straight away, straight into the slit. I had about 60 bees in my suit with me. I abandoned the hives and run to the nearest oak tree that was in shade, thinking that they might just stick round the hive and leave me alone. They didn't. They were just coming after me, one after another, trying to get into this hole. As I'm squishing my suit like this, trying to kill all the bees that are in it. And
my God!
8 stings under my eye. Stings under my eye, around my eye. Luckily, none in my eye, otherwise a high chance would have gone blind. So that was a terrifying experience. So I went back to the car after I'd squashed them all in my suit, got hold of my veil like this, covering the hole, and I found a couple of plasters in the first aid kit in my car, stuck them over it, and had to go back and put the bloody beehive back together again. So it was like round two.
David said he'd have buzzed off.
Certainly stopped on the way home that day.
I bet it was actually quite heartbreaking though, to have to kind of get rid of them.
Like that. Well, yeah, but it's either that or get a sting in the eye, and then that's it.
Yeah, you're done for.
Yeah, you're done for.
Oh my God.
You reckon if you get stung in one eye, you'll go blind in that eye, but it'll then transfer and it'll actually take the sight of both eyes.
Really?
I've been told, yeah. I don't know if that's right, but that's what I've been led to believe, yeah.
Bloody hell. Must be some sort of toxin in there that does that.
Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing. God. So you're one of the things you're really passionate about, and we said we were going to talk about as well, is what's on your Viking Bees icon, and that is around British farming, isn't it? So you're really passionate about the part that bees play in nature, conservation and farming and all of those things. And I think one of the things that's definitely connects all those things is for me it's like community and collective behavior, and that reflects, I think, very much what we need to do now as a human collective. And 2020 definitely screams that at us, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, if you look at bees, they fly within 3 miles of the hive. Sometimes they'll fly a little bit further. So, everything they do is locally sourced. We don't live anything like how bees live.
No.
Mental block.
We've talked about, so in the past we've had conversations about how do you relate how bees live to, for example, leadership, and using the lessons that bees have that can give, you know, give us about how we can actually be better at, you know, working together.
Well, we can. I mean, you know, if I stumble across a problem, I think how would the bees deal with it? You know, when you
So
look at
that's like a good motto for life, isn't it? Like, what would the bees do? You know, if you struggle with something.
You know,
I like that.
the bees all work together for the collective whole, don't they? Where we don't, we work for people to get a reward, basically. That reward usually being your wages at the end of the month. You know, we don't do it through the love of it. Most of us do it and bloody hate it. Let's face it.
Yeah.
You know, but the bees do it for the greater good of the economy, of their economy. You know, within that, bees all have separate jobs to do. You know, bees die in the hive. Undertaker bees will pick that bee up, take it out of the hive entrance, fly a good distance away with it, and then drop it. So you got undertaker bees. Yeah, it's all to do with not having any disease around where you're living. That's why they get rid of it. They use propolis, which is tree sap, which is really good for loads of things. If you've got a sore throat, if you gargle a bit of that melted in brandy, sore throat's gone like that. It's antibacterial, antifungal, all sorts. So that for bees is like a pharmacy in itself. It's like Boots for bees. Yeah. So they guard bees on the entrance of beehives to stop other bees from coming in that are not wanted. So there's nurse bees that tend to all the eggs and grubs and adult bees when they hatch out and emerge to feed them, and also feed the queen because she can't actually feed herself. She has to be fed by a royal court, her entourage of bees.
Is anyone else imagining different outfits, like nurse outfits?
Bees, yeah. So there's a variety of roles that bees play within a hive and throughout different parts of their life as well, because they can't actually fly out and forage until they're 3 weeks old. So the first 3 weeks of their life, they're in the hive and they're doing all these jobs. They've also, on top of that, they've got to sort of work out warehousing and storing logistics for the honey, because the honey will come in and be passed to one of the house bees. The house bees then go and store it in a cell, but then that water content of that nectar has to be evaporated out and reduced down to about 20%, so the honey doesn't ferment when it's stored. Yeah, so there's all these logistics as well. Yeah. So if you start comparing that into our society and all the jobs, different jobs that we do, you know, all logistics of all that as well. You know, if you look at it in terms of one business, you've got that side of it, and then you've got your flying bees bringing in your nectar and your pollen. So there's your goods in, and you got your storage and warehousing that you've got to deal with. So you can start making lots of analogies between bees and businesses just on that model in its own. Never mind going down like how bees govern themselves. You know, a lot of people think a queen runs a beehive. She doesn't. The bees run the beehive collectively. So the queen's there to give pheromones for instructions to feed or to not lay eggs or whatever. But the bees allow her to do that because it's the best interest for them. And if she starts failing with that, that's when they'll go and kill her and they'll start again with another queen. So she's just governance. She is government, not the ringleader.
That's fascinating. And, you know what I love about that is, the echo's really bad, isn't it? What I love about that is when I think about some of the companies that I've worked with, you know, I've got one in particular in mind, a client that I work with regularly and have done for a couple of years. When they first started, they did work almost like a family business, and they worked kind of collectively to this common goal that they were all excited by. And then as it got bigger, became this big sort of corporate type beast. Everybody's everybody says they're all working for the same goal, but actually they're all working for their own agenda. So it doesn't, as a system, it doesn't connect together, and nobody's communicating with each other, and everybody's trying to do their own thing and interpreting the goal differently. And, you know, they're sort of, you know, they're not behaving collaboratively. They're just not. And that, I think, happens all over the place.
Well, companies need to learn to waggle dance.
Tell us about waggle dance.
The waggle dance is the ways bees communicate with each other to where a source of nectar is or pollen is. So they'll take the beehive and the sun, and they'll know that their source is here. So they'll come back to their hive, and they will do several figure of eights. But as they come through the center, they vibrate their abdomen like that. So the length they travel and the amount of vibrations is a distance from the hive to the sun to where their food source is. If you could record it and slow it down in real time, you could actually pinpoint exactly within a meter of where they're flying to. You could decode it. And once a swarm's emerged out of a hive and they're clustered somewhere, if you look closely, you'll see several different bees all doing different waggle dances. And they're the scout bees that have been out and come back, gone, look, I found this place, I think it's an ideal house, it's here. So they do the waggle dance. So it's their form of communicating everything. They also communicate through vibration. The bees don't have ears, they hear through the feet. They pick up off vibration. So when you hear a humming and drumming of a hive at night, especially when they're processing honey, the bees are feeling that vibration. They know they need to vibrate the wings and drive that moisture content out of the honey.
I bet if you put like super powered microphones inside a hive, you'd get a great like sort of meditation thing or something.
You don't need a microphone. Summer's night, you stand by a beer hive, it sounds like an engine's running.
Really?
Yeah. You can hear this just low humming noise. Yeah, it's quite special.
I wonder if
you're really lucky when queens are hatching out. If you're really lucky, you hear a pip 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 noise, and it's the queens piping. They make like a piping sound. Yeah.
Oh my god. I wonder if there's a company or a movement or something out there called Waggle Dance, because if there's not, then the world's missing out. Waggle Dance is such a great thing.
I've not found one yet. I've found a guy in America that does corporate stuff related to bees, and he uses the Waggle Dance as part of that. But he does a lot of his management side of things around different parts of bees and beekeeping. See, if you can keep your mind open and look at beehives and learn how bees operate and how they work, you can really make the analogy between our life and that of a bee. I mean, like I said before, you know, the way bees expand through swarming, you know, from starting in Africa and now the worldwide, you know, that's globalization, like I said before. And this is what bees are doing, but they're not doing it for one massive grand gain. They're doing it for each individual colony. They've done it to spread, you know.
And therefore the world.
This honey's not getting piled into one bank account and there's one big bee called Rothschild sat there somewhere, you know what I mean? Like we're all been instructed to do. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not going down that road. I'll just get right on my soapbox.
We don't mind a bit of soapbox. So
no.
So you know, we talk a lot about ASMR. Sharon's talking about from the noises from the hive. There's a lot of people talking about how obviously we know bees are essential to our planet, our ecosystem, so on. And that you know, if we don't look after them, we're going to be in trouble. How close are we to that? How real is that threat at the moment?
Okay, so we've seen up to now that bees may or may not rebel. As you look at it in a lot of ways, this is one rebellion that bees are doing, and they're dying. They are dying. They're dying because of lack of their environment. We've lost 96% of wildflower meadows since the 70s. We're losing hedgerows to massive open expanse fields for monoculture crops, which are being grown to feed meat, to feed us, which as much as I love meat and I am a meat eater, although we do eat a lot less now than we ever used to do, it just seems false negatives, doesn't it? So bees in America, you know, there's been reports of annual losses in America of over 50% of the bee populations in the States, and here. Why is this happening? Well, if you've just got a field full of blueberries and you put beehives on that, and all they're getting is blueberry nectar, it's like you're eating fish and chips every day of the week for weeks on end. You know, you're going to get sick of it and you're going to bugger off, aren't you? So that's what's a lot of the colony collapse disorder has been linked to monocultures in crops, no diversity or variety of diet, and also insecticides, pesticides, herbicides all affect the bees. It's like almond, you know, massive millions of acres of almonds have grown in the States, a lot of it for milk, for almond milk. So the bees will still be flying at around sunset, just when the sprayers go through the almonds to spray insecticide over the trees. You know, it only takes a few bees to bring a small dose of that back to the hive, and then the whole hive is infected, and that's then wipes out. So, you know, I won't buy anything with almonds in it. Nothing. I won't buy anything. You know, yeah, almond milk is terrible for bees. Terrible.
Wow.
Yeah. So, you know, there's a lot of reasons why bees are dying out, and it's loss of habitat. It's the main cause. You know.
See, I didn't know all of that. I knew, I suppose I knew there was a habitat link there, but I never knew about the monoculture thing, monocrop thing. That makes so much sense though when you put it like that, and it's tragic. It's really tragic.
I used to have bees up on a friend's farm, and I moved them after the first 18 months of them being there. Because if you go out to any countryside now, take a good look round. What we got? Hedges that are not flowering because they're cut back that hard. Grass fields, bees don't use grass pollen. Cornfields, bees not interested in cornfields. What else have you got? Cabbages here, maybe a few carrots there. No good for bees. There's nothing in the countryside. It's a desert for bees.
So Sharon's asking, what can we do? So you're rebelling against what we're doing to the planet by being a beekeeper. What else can those of us who don't have access to that, sort of situation, what can we do to help that?
Okay, when you buy plants in a garden centre, you need to find out that they're not been raised using systemic chemicals. So a systemic chemic within a plant, when a bee feeds on the pollen or nectar of that flower, that systemic chemical is coming through that flower. So that can transfer herbicide, pesticide, etc. back into a hive. So check your source. Don't use F1 variety plants, because these have been, well, like F1 plants are plants that have been bred to have a certain characteristic. You know, they might produce a bigger yield, a larger fruit, or a veg, or whatever. Colour, anything. You know, if you saved seeds off that plant and planted them, you won't get the same variety next year. It'll revert back to its parent plant. So buy seeds from companies like Heirloom Seeds and people that do like fruit and veg that we've had for donkey's years, that that actually some of them are a lot better than the F1 varieties. So yeah, don't use F1. Most importantly though for bees is flowers. You got a flower that's a double bloom, they can't get in there. You need a single open. The more open the flower and accessible the flower is, like a sunflower, the more accessible it is for a bee to get to the pollen and nectar that's within it. So steer away from your fancy double bloom flowers. You know, grow as many flowers as you can. If you haven't got any space, just have a little small bucket with some soil in it and a few holes in the bottom for drainage, and just put some wildflowers in it in a bucket. You know, on your balcony, anything like that'll do. You know, every little bit. If everyone just did one bucket of wildflowers, you know, it would certainly help. If you can grow more than that, brilliant. You know.
See, a lot of this knowledge isn't out there, is it? So the flowers bit makes sense, but I don't think a lot of people make that connection. But also, no. I mean, I would never have thought a double bloom flower would be a problem. Like, it, you know, there's a lot of this stuff that I think it isn't in public.
No, it's not. It's not only with double bloom flowers. It's not just double bloom flowers. It's a lot of flowers that have been bred to look nice and showy and fancy don't actually produce any pollen or nectar. They're actually sterile. They're completely sterile. They're just bred for looks, and obviously they are absolutely no use whatsoever to. It's not just bees; it's all pollinators that are suffering the problem. It's it's night moths and butterflies and loads of other things, hoverflies, all kinds of things.
Sharon said they grow tomatoes and strawberries from seed, and I do see a few bees when the flowers are out. Dave says my neighbour has a tree, and in summer it sounds like a hive. So you said something about heirloom seeds. Is that a company name?
Yeah, heirloom seeds is a company. Yeah, there's various companies that do heirloom seeds, which are like, you know, our varieties from way back when. You know, some of these varieties are actually, we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them completely at some point. You know, if people don't keep growing them. There's also, if you look online, there's loads of seed sharing, seed swap type places. There's a company down Dorset way that do wildflower seeds, and they grow acres and acres of wildflower, and they collect the seed off what they grow and then sell the seed. Yeah, there's quite a few knocking about. If you just do a Google search for them, you'll find them for heirloom varieties.
That's really good. David, shall I get a cutting? A cutting of what, mate? Your tree or neighbour's tree or what? There's a delay on the chat. That's the only problem. So sometimes the questions come in and I have to link back to where they connect to in the conversation. We'll see if Dave comes up with an answer. So tell me a little bit more about the sort of farming bit of, so you've got, what is it that you say on your what's the hashtag that you've got on your Facebook group about the
British farming?
Yeah.
Well, again, it's about local business as well, isn't it? It's buying locally to be more sustainable, not having all the usual food miles, etc. You know, Tesco's will go to a UK grower and they'll get 10 ton of sprouts off him, fly it to Poland to be put in nets, to be flown back to the UK to be put on Tesco store shelves. Why can't you net the bloody things here?
Yeah.
You know, so if you go to your local farmer's market or your local farm shop, you're cutting out all that middle chain. You know, you're giving a poke in the eye to capitalism at the same time. So
yeah.
So
that's one thing we can do more of.
We can all do.
Buy local.
Yeah, buy local, buy British, buy local. And it's not just your food as well. It's anything, isn't it? You know, there's loads of craft people out there making all kinds of things. Yeah, all right, they do tend to be a little bit dearer, but you know, if you're keeping that cash within your own sort of community in your own area, and benefiting the people around you, you're starting to sort of work more like a bee.
Yeah, I agree. I'd rather pay. You know, I use Etsy a lot more than I used to, for example, to get different gifts for people and so on. I will, you know, absolutely fully admit I am on Amazon far too much. I use Amazon all the time, and I need to check myself and do better with that.
I'm no different, Emma. You know.
It's so convenient. That's the problem, isn't it? It's convenient. It's cheap. You just press a button and it arrives sometimes the same day at your house.
But you know, we've been sold into this machine, haven't we? We're the cog of the machine. You know, this is the way you do it. You know, will make you work harder, so you've got less time, so you have to go and use this convenience.
Yeah, yeah. And it, we touching on that capitalism thing, we said the other day, didn't we, that we need to figure out how to behave more locally. And one of the problems with the whole economic system the way it is that it's always about expanding, getting bigger, making more money, more domination. And the problem with that is, we're using resources all the time that are just being massively depleted. So it's at some point it's gonna just crash and burn. And from when you look at sort of how bees behave and so on, and you look at old traditional independent farms, for example, that was about providing locally. It wasn't about let's get as big as we can so we can provide globally.
It's not like that with farms anyway, because you've got some super farms down south that have got like massive acreage. Farming is going to change a lot, I think, with Brexit. I mean, I don't really want to go down that road with Brexit, but it's going to affect a lot of the subsidies that farmers get. That's been one area that's been a big bone of contention with a lot of farmers. You've got a guy down south that's got 1 million acres, and he's getting the same amount per acre as the bloke with 30 acres in Wales. Where's the fairness there? They both still need to survive. Except he's getting a check for several million quid, and he's getting a check for like several hundred quid. So
hard,
it's all the corporate game, and it's all the money, the money go around, isn't it? So but when you talk about vast expansions of companies, taking over the world and globalization, bees have been doing that for years. They've just not made it about money. They made it about survival.
Yeah, and what they're doing is contributing to the world by just being themselves, aren't they? It's an essential part.
No, they're doing more than that, really. They're contributing to the world by being themselves, but they're also putting food on our plate. Because every third forkful of food you eat has been pollinated by something, usually a bee. And you take bees out of the equation, and we've got a pretty sad existence. No fruit left anymore, and a lot of other things will go as well.
Yeah, be interesting to perhaps connect to you. And so I don't know if you've seen Paul Harris interacting in the group. So he works a lot with agriculture and specifically dairy farming. So he certainly will have some thoughts on all of this kind of stuff. Go on.
Yeah, he will have. I mean, I've been out of farming for a long time, and a lot's changed since the time I've been in farming. I was 18 when I left the farm. I'm 46 this year. So, to be honest, when I look back at it now, it seems like a different life.
Yeah,
it seems like a different life.
I feel like that about it. When I look back on those days, it was like, I mean, I know we were kids, but there was like a certain innocence about it, wasn't there? And there was a sense of freedom that that I don't remember really experiencing anywhere else.
No, I mean, it was pretty boring at times growing up on a farm as a kid, but it was also a lot of fun. Yeah. Because like I said, my memories of it now are very faded, really. It's been way over 20 years since I had anything to do with a farm. So
I remember working my arse off one summer at your farm. My first wages ever were blooming courgettes and cabbages and all of that stuff. And that was bloody hard work, and it was a right cracking the flag summer as well.
Yeah, it's not an easy life farming by any means.
No, it was very difficult that summer. David's asking a really good question. Are wasps as important as bees for pollination? Do wasps do anything of any use?
Wasps are very, very important to
our ecosystem.
Very important. So when you've got a roadkill at the side of the road, and it's full of flies and whatnot, the wasps will be eating those maggots. Wasps primarily are carnivores, and they're nature's little cleanup team. So they'll help that pear that's fallen off a tree rot down in the back end of summer, when they're going for sweet juice, and getting pissed on it and then wanting to sting people and fight. But primarily through up until about that point, they are nature's cleanup team, really. They keep the number of flies down by eating maggots and whatnot. Yeah, and hornets the same as well.
They're what, sorry?
And hornets are the same as well. You know,
really?
A lot of people look at a wasp and go, "Oh, it's a wasp." And quite often it could be a European hornet, but yeah, quite important creatures, really. As much as we dislike.
Yeah, I've never been stung by a wasp, and as a result, or a bee, as a result, I'm actually more scared of them than probably if I had been stung.
I can put you in a bee suit anytime you want, Em, if you want to get stung by a bee.
Oh my god. I'm all right, thanks. I'd have 3 suits on.
In Europe, there's a lot of clinics that do bee therapy. It's just starting to slip into the UK a little bit now, but there's a lot of red tape to it. But bee sting therapy is very good for MS sufferers, for arthritis. There's the compounds within a sting venom are anti-inflammatory for joint problems and stuff like that. Yeah, so there's a lot of research going into bee venom treatments and whatnot. There's a lot of face creams you can buy that contain bee venom. It's supposed to tighten your skin.
I was thinking I could take the skin so it pumps it a bit like chili does.
Yeah.
We've got a Facebook user, I don't know who, saying the only thing I'm scared of is ladybirds. Bring on the bees and wasps. Why are you scared of ladybirds?
Ladybirds bite.
They stink as well. I get them in my flat between sort of March and May, and they used to just hang around on the window frames, and now they come in and they're awful. And I have to bleach down the window frames and all around every year, put menthol spray on them and all of that stuff, and they stink. Really stink.
I've never noticed them smell. I've had plenty of them in my garden shed, but yeah,
they smell horrible, and because they release this smell to attract others. But of course, they're not native British ladybirds. They're all the Harlequin imposters, but they absolutely stink when they collect. You know, that's sort of stuff they leave on your hand if you let one walk across your hand. It stinks. It's horrid. What else? Let's see what the guys are saying. It's got some interesting stuff coming up. Dave says, I love how in nature everything works together. If only we could impregnate this thought into the human psyche and not all be about the money. Do you know what, David? I think it is in the human psyche, but we've forgotten it and we don't listen to it because we're too busy being fed messages about how we should consume products and be successful and look after ourselves, you know. Yeah.
I mean, you know, you take bees, you look at bees, they live with synergy and harmony all the time. You know, a bee goes to a flower's offering nectar for the bee to come in, so it wipes its back on its pollen, then goes to the next flower for its nectar to deposit that pollen, to wipe its back with that pollen, to take to another flower. You know, synergy and harmony. Everyone wins and everyone gains. From it.
Even with those, you know, those things that we would see as cruel aspects of how they behave, how nature behaves, that's all for a reason, isn't it? It all clicks together. And it's very important. Shazza says they also sell honey as antiseptic. That's fun to use. The bad memories if they bite, that can be my live topic if I get on. Again, Facebook user, I have no idea who you are, so put your name in one of the comments or give StreamYard permission to post your name on your settings. What else was I going to ask you as well? Was something about the therapy, the bee sting therapy, and I can't remember what it was now.
Apiculture, I think it's called. No. Oh, I can't remember the name they call these clinics abroad now.
Oh, it's
yeah. Anyway.
The MK's asking, it is MK, isn't it? Is that how I'm meant to say it, Chuck? She's asking, do you know of any other insects or bugs that do any actual jobs like bees do, so they all have different roles and stuff? Is there any other systems that you're aware of that do that?
Yeah, all of them have got their own importance in nature, otherwise it wouldn't be there. Yeah.
I think they have like communities though. You so like, you know, you were saying how bees have lots of different kinds of bees that do different jobs.
Yeah, well, bees and ants are from the same family, so and ants live in big colonies as well. So yeah, they do. There's loads of animal groups that do live in colonies. None work quite as good as bees. Bees have got it up to a fine art. They've been doing it for millennia. Yeah, there's quite a few. I mean, there's only honeybees that live in colonies. You know, bumblebees don't. They live in small groups. Bumblebees, they might be up to about 100 in a nest. But you've got loads and loads and loads of solitary bees. They just live like in holes in masonry or dig holes in the floor. Yeah. I mean, red mason bee is a bee I've been doing a bit of work with and breeding at the moment with the kids, because they're dead safe for kids. They have got a sting, but they wouldn't use it unless you squash one in your hand. They're not smaller than a honeybee, little buff-tailed little bee they are. And yeah, you can watch them as they sort of go back into and lay eggs and gather pollen and seal it up with mud and then in a tube. And then, come the end of the year, you open the tube and there's little bees there that have got little chrysalis around themselves, and you store them till the spring, and then they all hatch out, and then they do the same thing again. But there's little bees.
Educational thing though, like Anna Deacon will be into that because she's sort of teaching her kids about important stuff like that, doesn't she?
There's the honeybee is the only insect in the world that produces a food source that we can eat. And in the UK, there's about 253 different species of bee in the UK.
Wow, that's amazing.
Only one of them produces food, and only one of them lives in a colony.
And it's a delicious food. I've had your honey. It's so nice.
Yeah, it's good.
Nice. Don't get a huge amount of it coming through though, do you? So it's always like your people are like fighting for it, aren't they?
Oh, it sells out within a couple of days.
Yeah.
But I only run 4 hives, so that's why I don't get so much. I always leave the bees some as well. I never take all of it.
MK says, what's the job of an ant? So I guess it's probably similar to bees in that don't they have like a queen ant and ants and all of those things?
Again, ants, they provide good drainage. They live in soils. They burrow like tunnels through all the soils. That all helps rainwater drain away, and it all helps constitute the goodness and fertility of soil as well. And every insect in nature has got a job and responsibility to do. Yeah.
And we we try and kill off a lot. You get ants on your patio, you want to kill them off. All of those things. And it like so Dave says, apparently if you eat local honey, it helps combat hay fever. Yeah, that I've heard that as well. It's if you eat honey that's local to you. Is that a bit of a fallacy then?
It is and it isn't. It depends on whether you're a sufferer of grass pollen or tree pollen. If you're a sufferer of grass pollen, honey won't do anything for you because bees don't collect grass pollen. If you're a sufferer from tree pollen, then yeah, honey is very likely to help you. Yeah, as they'll be working. Yeah, you need to know which one it is you suffer from.
Yeah. So what volume of honey would you get from one hive a year, do you reckon?
It varies a lot. It's weather dependent, Emma, really. Season dependent. Yeah, I've had as little as £10 out of a beehive, and I've had as much as £100 out of a beehive.
Bloody hell. You were making like that at one point, weren't you?
I still do, but when I was going around farmers markets and stuff, obviously pre-COVID days, and selling honey and whatnot, I didn't sell very many candles at all. You know, people buy on price, you know, rightly so, wrongly, whatever. People buy on price, and you know, the girl at the end of the stall that's selling the soya wax candles for, you know, 10 for a pound or whatever, they're going to buy them rather than pay a £5 for one beeswax candle. So
I seem to remember I had a couple of them off you, and they were like Christmassy molds, I think.
Yeah.
There's something about proper beeswax there's a certain smell to it, and the texture and the colour I think is lovely that you just can't reproduce, you know, with soy wax.
It actually burns far slower than any other wax as well, so it lasts longer as a candle. And it also cleans the air in your home because it gives out negative ions that attach to the positive ones on dust and stuff, and actually bring the dust down out of your atmosphere. So they actually clean the air as well the burning.
So great for allergies and stuff, like dust allergies and stuff like that.
Yeah. I mean, beeswax is great stuff, you know.
Oh yeah, so useful.
I mean, was it King Edward III paid for most of his army with it for the wars against France? God, you know, beeswax, you know, Vikings used it for sealing up the boats, for making weapons with. You know, it's been used. I think even Haribo used to use it in the sweets.
Did they?
Beeswax can be used as a lock-in carrier for flavourings.
Wow.
Beeswax has just got many uses for beeswax. It's unbelievable. Not just hand creams and lip balms and whatnot. There's millions of uses.
Amazing.
Casting, you know, you're doing a metal casting or something, you'd make whatever you want to make out of the beeswax. You carve the beeswax, you then encase that into whatever and have a hole at the bottom and pour in your molten metal. As the wax run out the bottom, your metal fills up your cast. You know, it's a process called lost wax casting.
That's tricky to say.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Dave's now saying if he's got a grass allergy, he's going to have to get some horse honey. Idiot.
Yeah, good luck with that. Yeah.
It won't be honey, mate. Sharon, I think it's MK saying, spent a week in Corfu watching a whole community of them live on the patio. Ants, I'm assuming. Amazing things to watch. Or maybe that was Sharon that said that. I'm confused now. Dave said, my favourite, so this is my favourite fact and I'd like it to be true. So here's my fact/question. Honey is completely useless to bees. Therefore, they only produce it for someone or something else. How accurate is that, Matt?
Absolute total loaded tosh.
Total loaded tosh, Dave.
Yeah. Bees have two sources of food. First one being the nectar out of flowers. You know, that is their primary food source, is the nectar out of flowers. So they bring that back to the beehive and they evaporate the water content out of it down to about 20% or less. And then that stores it over winter. And it's that stored nectar, honey, that is the bee's secondary food source that they then use to get them through the winter months, because they don't hibernate, they don't go to sleep in the hive. They are still awake and active in there, and they need food to maintain a temperature in that hive over the winter of about 28 degrees.
Ooh,
so
cool.
Yeah, so they have a unique ability to detach the wings from the flight muscles, and they vibrate the flight muscles without moving the wings to generate heat. And they all cluster very tightly into like what you'd imagine as a football. We got the frames running through them like this, but they're all clustered like a football shape. And the ones in the middle that are getting a bit warm, they move to the outside and let the outer ones move in. And yeah, they just vibrate the flight muscles without moving their wings and keep warm. The queen's always in the middle. Yeah, and that cluster will just move around the hive, consuming what's in there during the winter months.
They're so clever. We could talk for hours about this, I think, couldn't we? And we've done an hour already, and that's gone so quickly. It's such a fascinating topic.
It is, and it's so much more I could tell you. So much.
We need to do this again then at some point, don't we? We'll have a bee related question time or something.
Yeah.
That'd be so fun. Thank you so much, Matt. And guys, I'm so sorry for the sound issues that we've had. I know it's been a bit weird, so God knows how that'll come out on the recording. Have you enjoyed it?
Yeah, it's been great. Yeah, it's been good.
Good. And thank you so much for your interaction, guys. And I think we've had some great questions and really good input in there as well. Massive thank you, mate. Love you so much, and I'm so grateful for this.
You're welcome.
Go and enjoy your swanky new kitchen. It's been doing a lot of work on their house. This looks very nice.
It is. It is now. It's been hard graft. Yeah.
I'll have to come round for a brew when we're allowed.
Definitely. When we're allowed, yeah, defo. No worries there. Yeah.
Love to the girls.
I will. Thank you very much. You're welcome, Chick.
I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye.